So, Fred, I'm so happy to be talking to you right now during our first episode of Hopelab's new series, Building Up Your Mental Wellbeing. During the series, we're going to explore different ways to build up your mental well-being for yourself personally and also your community that surrounds you every single day. To get started,
hmm
let's talk about who you are, what generation you're from, and what you do at Hopelab.
Sure. My name's Fred Dillon, and I am Gen X, born in the 70s, early 70s. Um, and I am Senior Director for Strategy at Hope Lab. So I help to think through the products that we're going to build and make sure we have mechanisms to get them distributed and get them ultimately in the hands of young people who could benefit from them.
Nice. And what are some different ways that you are able to implement those strategies at Hopelab, like the products and whatnot?
Mhm. Yeah, we're always designing products to improve health and well-being for adolescents and young adults and looking for interesting opportunities. And the way we usually do it, if we really take what we call a reverse engineering approach, where we'll start with a health problem or a health outcome that we're after, that we're trying to affect, like reducing anxiety, reducing depressive symptoms, things like that. And then we'll think backwards to what are the behaviors that might affect that. So things like having more gratitude in your life, writing letters of gratitude to people, doing acts of kindness. Those things can actually positively affect those health outcomes. And then we think about, okay, so what's the psychological targets that could affect those health behaviors, and then ultimately what's the product we can create that could have that effect and potentially affect those health outcomes we care so much about.
Nice. So for part one of our conversation, I'm going to ask you this prompt right here. How can you make social connections to improve your mental well-being throughout your everyday life?
Sure. Yeah, social connections, as we all know from the literature, are critical to our mental health and well-being. And that feeling like you belong, feeling like you have people on your side, people that know you, that get you, is absolutely essential. And you really can have that, make that happen throughout your day in various ways. One is to just look through your current contacts, the people that you care about, reach out to someone, especially now with COVID. It's a really different time, but making sure to see if somebody can get on a Zoom call or FaceTime call with you at some point, or even just send texts.
Yeah.
Text can be a powerful way to just get conversation going. Even group texts that I do with my family are some of the funniest and most connective texts that I actually have.
Yeah.
And it just make me really bring to life who that person is for me and
Mhm.
why they're so important.
I'm a part of Gen Z, so I'm still in college right now, and things are completely virtual for me. So I feel as if it is hard to always be out there and making social connections when you're stuck at home behind a computer all the time. But it's just taking that extra step forward to be intentional with how you're spending your time and how you're loving others that you have love for. So it can be hard at times, but I think it makes a great, great impact. Um, are there any particular ways that you're able to make great impact when it comes to reaching out and making social connections?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, I mean, social media gets a bad rap in some ways, sometimes because people can be overly attuned to it or using it in ways that aren't as good for them. But if you use it in really positive ways, you can find posts of someone that you maybe haven't seen in a while, and you can make comments and be excited about what's going on in their lives. And by showing up in that way, that can often start a conversation. Sometimes it can also be just that you DM someone because you saw something on their post and want to know more about it. And that can be the beginnings of a conversation, help you build a deeper relationship with those people.
Yeah, social media does get a bad rep sometimes, but I think it's all about balance, like, balancing the good and bad, because everything has a good and bad. Are you able to balance social media and weighing up those pros and cons while also being able to
Mhm.
make social connections with others?
Yeah, well, what the literature says, and again, it's still early days on this, but if all you're doing on social media is consuming data and taking it in and just reading about other people, but you're not interacting yourself, you're not posting your own posts, you're not commenting on posts, you're not turning it into more of a dialogue. That's when you fall into trouble. So I think the more you can treat social media as a real avenue for connection, and that really you want to be commenting, you want to be doing those direct messages and in other ways, and not just be a consumer.
Right.
As a consumer, it can be super easy to just read about everyone's lives and get this sense like, oh, wow, everyone's having this great life. When in reality, people are only showing so much of themselves on social media.
Mhm.
So but it's a great way to kind of see what's going on in people's people's lives and have a conversation starter. Um,
And what value do you find in like not being a consumer all the time and being the person to generate conversations and be the person to your go-to person to, start conversation that people wouldn't always have if it wasn't for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're really interested in someone else and you ask them good questions and really are trying and genuinely have curiosity and interest in what they're doing, that usually is a great starter for having a rich conversation. I think when people feel like, oh, this person's genuinely curious and interested and wants to learn about this trip I took here or this book I recently recommended, I think when you have those kind of hooks, and when someone feels like that you've actually paid attention, you've actually been sort of seeing what they're doing and are genuinely interested in learning more, I think that's a great foundation for a really excellent conversation, a great way to kind of connect more deeply.
And if you break down a conversation has the power to embody so much more than just the physical talking element of it. You can learn about a person, what they like to do, and then take those elements and then put it in a meaningful way. So, for example, if you're a leader of somebody, you take those things and try to incorporate in a way where they want to do the job because you know them on a personal level. So knowing people on a personal level is always a great way to make social connections.
Absolutely, absolutely, and fine. And you also have to be okay that sometimes you'll try really hard and someone maybe isn't being responsive.
Yeah.
There may be moments where, for whatever reason, certain people, maybe they just aren't in the right headspace to have those kinds of conversations at that point, or
You have
that's
to be
just
okay
not
with
what
that.
they're.
To be okay
And
with.
you have to be okay with that. I think you always have to be a little gentle with yourself. You make yourself a little bit vulnerable by opening it up and starting it off, and you just can't take it too personally if it doesn't pan out in exactly the way you had hoped or wanted it to. And the good news is there's usually a bunch of other people in your feed or that you're connected to that you can kind of try this multiple times, and usually you'll find a few folks who are really eager to engage.
Yeah, and it's so much that we can only do as an individual, especially with our work with Hope Lab and our individual personal lives and family and whatnot. But as a community, what are some ways we can all come together to build great social connection and impact for individuals that surround our community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one, I mean, wherever you're living, paying attention to who your neighbors are, paying attention to who's in your community, getting involved with any kind of local efforts that may be going on. There's several in my neighborhood of places where people gather to um, fix the parks in the area, do some weeding, all that kind of stuff. But there are just really amazing ways to get connected, get involved. A lot of the food banks these days are really looking for people and volunteers. And although, there can be risks involved with that if you take the proper precautions,
Right.
you can be really giving back, and that can have great satisfaction for yourself and be really meaningful to the community and be a great way to meet people in your community as
Yeah.
well.
And then those are all great things, especially on a nice Saturday or Sunday, you can go out in the community and do something nice for someone else. But when it comes to mental well-being inside of the everyday life, from Monday through Sunday, every single day, are there any ways that your community is building great impact within mental well-being?
Yeah, I would say a few things I've done, and that I think other people have done, is sometimes having a regular, a regular weekly check-in call with a group of people, a set of people that you're just very, very close to, that you really feel like you can let your hair down, you can kind of talk about whatever's on the mind, and you can be there for one another. I think creating that sort of safety and a place with community of folks that hopefully just really know you and have your back and are willing to kind of just talk through stuff together has been super important for me.
Hmm.
And
And
sometimes that takes some time to nature that, to find that group, bring them together, try different configurations. Sometimes even a book club can be a way to kind of test those waters out,
yeah.
to start to build those kind of community. But that can be really helpful.
And those type of things, like, as you said, it takes so much time because to build it's like you're building your custom friend group that is built for you.
Hmm.
But when you take that time to actually think about it and build it out, it's so worth it because you can build meaningful connections, meaningful conversations can be sparked, and you have somebody to go to and to check in with during rough times. So what value do you find in having that a go-to person or go-to friend group when it comes to expressing how you feel about things or sharing your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with the go-to friends, with people that I know, like I just have a trust and a safety with them. I feel like they really know me, but I also feel like they have my back. And I also feel like they're truth tellers too. Like they're gonna like give me, the real deal, like, and really help me to see, where I might like, I may tell them a story and they may say, oh, well, that, did you think about it this way? And I'm like, oh, you're right. Maybe I interpreted that in the wrong way. And that's super helpful just to have someone else to sort of share, like, you had something go on in your life that you weren't particularly happy with, or you felt like you dropped the ball or whatever. Having a group of people where you can kind of share that with, and then they reflect back and say, it doesn't sound like that at all. In fact, it sounds like this or this happened. Really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful as well. And we're in a time right now, like the holiday season, where we're doing so many things for other people. But the last person we focus on to generate and to energize ourselves is ourselves. We don't really give ourselves enough credit. We don't give ourselves enough time when it comes to building up our mental well-being. So what value do you find also, holding ourselves accountable for checking up on ourselves? 'Cause we're always checking up on someone else or helping someone else out, but it's very, very valuable to focus on ourselves sometimes too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that even that just question of yourself of on a regular basis throughout the day of like, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Why am I feeling that way? Naming it, often just being able to name what you're feeling is your first step to taming it, if you will. And by naming it, you can then better understand, think about, okay, do I want to stay in this mode or do I want to try to shift my mood? And what are some strategies I can try to do that? So we at Hope Lab developed something a few years ago called the Mood Meter app that we worked on with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And the app basically does that. You can set it up, and every several, you can set it up so that 3 or 4 times a day it'll
Sounds
ask you
excellent.
that and give you some of those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
'Cause
that deep reflection is important because it's really easy to kind of gloss over how your day is going, but in reality, there's a lot of stuff happening, and it's good to understand the triggers, and it's good to understand how you can move yourself out of a mode of feeling or thinking.
And I think that just taking the time to, like you said, put a label on how you're feeling and truly understand it and not try to just brush it under the rug will
Yeah.
help things down the line because when you brush things under the rug all the time, it piles up until it's too much. And then that's why people have their breaks. So, are there any techniques that you find helpful when it comes to labeling how you're feeling throughout your days?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think sometimes you kind of are like, oh, I think I'm feeling anxious, but then you kind of unpack it a bit more, and you're like, well, is that really anxious or is it stress? And what's that stress caused by? And is that really the stress from work, or is it actually a stress that I'm having with a family member? That is, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's gonna constantly asking like five whys sometimes, like, well, why do you feel that way, and why do you feel that way, to kind of get to that higher level, so you really unpack like what's behind the emotion so you can better strategize or think about how you might reframe these thoughts, things like that.
And for anybody who's watching right now, any final tips on how to unpack those feelings and how to debrief those hard times that you're going through?
Yeah, I think a lot of it writing down is really powerful. Whether it's in an app or on paper, just sort of jotting down how you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, and how you want to be feeling, and what things you might try to feel in a different way. The one other thing I would say, there are several practices that people can do that can be really helpful. One is like the three good things every day. At the end of the day, taking a note of what are the three good things that happened to you or in the world that day that you want to just reflect on. And having that is a really powerful way of, like, no matter what all the gloom and doom is or how much bad stuff is going on, to know, oh, my dog was great. He learned how to roll over today, and da 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 da, or whatever it might be. And then having that list to go back to, really powerful.
Yeah, and it's being very intentional with how you're spending your time and also reflecting on your time as well.
That's right. That's
And
right.
such good thoughts and tips for everybody watching. Thank you so, so much. And you definitely taught me a few things I'm going to take away from this conversation.
Yeah, well, it's a great delight. I was so happy to do this. It's been great to connect with you in your work at Hope Lab.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for watching, you all, and have a great day.